the question is there a lot of market for me for exporting? The games industry is very much an export market. The audience is worldwide. It's a very, very big market now, but recent changes have made the barrier to entry into that market incredibly low, which means it's an incredibly competitive market. To compete in that market, you tend to need a team of people, and so that's why you need to have that collaboration. But yeah, there's definitely a market there, and you have to be clever. You have to use everything that's at your disposal, and you have to be very lucky. I think you have to have all the things that... I think there's a lot of similarities between the film industry that Stuart was talking about and the games industry now.
Hello, my name is Professor Mario Minichello. I work at the university, and we've been trying to put together a creative industry centre to complement the work of the university and try and actually get more creative industries set up and as a form of employment in the city. I think we have got some amazingly talented people in the city. We're just not very able to surface them and to connect them in the way that we should. The connections, the interconnections, the silos, I think it's because Australians are very independent people, seem to be very difficult to kind of form sometimes. So I have a couple of questions. One is, how do we get people to link up a bit more? When do we just have big parties in the centre? That's question one. Would you like to do that one first, and then I'll do the next two before they ban me from speaking? I've got the microphone. I'm a black belt. They can't get it off me. Go, Stu. You answer the first one. You've got the microphone.
Can you hear me? Excellent. We managed to create a little team for ourselves to make this film through a magical website called Gumtree. We just put a little ad, a few ads actually, just saying we're interested in finding a few people who are passionate about filmmaking, possibly a student, possibly recently graduated, and if you'd like to come and do work experience on a film, then get in touch. And we had so many people that I ended up doing a whole heap of interviews and just found that the best of the best, or the best of the keen, shall we say, who all turned out to be really great. And we used the same thing for casting. We had just a couple of ads put on Gumtree, and then we had so many emails that we had a really wonderful selection, and that meant that the quality of our collaborators were great, resulting in a much better quality product. There's a few things in addition to that. Just generally things like this, like we're doing today, just people getting together, having a chat about things, and then you just form like little groups, and it doesn't seem to really be any official group of creatives here in Newcastle. There's no like umbrella organisation or anything, but there are certainly little core groups around, but there's just no sort of official affiliation with anything.
Yeah, it's a real issue, and I don't know if it is a real issue for Newcastle, and I think it is an issue for most regional centres, but particularly Newcastle, because we're stuck in the middle. We're not a small town and we're not a big city either. And I think a lot of people particularly people who have always lived in Newcastle, take for granted the contacts that they have. There's the saying that there's always 2 degrees of separation in Newcastle, and I take for granted the things that I've only learnt in the last 4 years, that Ben here, who's only just come back after being away for 15 years, it's just a clean slate for him. He's got no idea what the connections already are, and those connections are changing it's kind of like the revitalisation of the CBD. It happens so slowly, yet it's happening all the time. And so you can go away and come back, and even after 3 months, a lot's changed. But if you're living in it every day, you don't notice it so much. And I don't know what the answer is in terms of... I don't know that a body that represents all creatives is probably the answer, but I think for being able to provide creatives an opportunity to network is really vital, and I think that's lacking. And I think there's lots of things that happen, but no one's really keen on self-promotion in Newcastle. I don't know if they're just like waiting to move to Sydney or Melbourne or New York or LA to make a name for themselves. And I find that really odd, because with the internet and technology the way it is, there's no need to move to those places anymore to make a name for yourself. And so I think just providing those kinds of get-togethers, creative get-togethers that might be not so necessarily themed around a particular genre of creativity, because a lot of it's left to serendipity and a lot of it's cross-platform creativity where all the really good ideas happen. So I think it's just as simple as that. Organise drinks, get together.
Is that right? I'm going to take the opportunity, because Edward Duke is here, who's going to shoot me daggers at the moment. I've just taken the opportunity yesterday at the Innovation Festival in Newcastle now, launched its target program around creative and innovative applications to the city revitalisation through the Gionni platform and the Vimoc technology platform, which is sensor-based. The next stage in that is the board has agreed in principle to allow some time to generating just what you're saying, opportunities for creative people to meet. And I think Olivia's been in touch with us in the last couple of weeks. Mario is obviously going to be central at. We've set up a small working party, and we're going to, I think, probably looking at the people around here, capture a few of them to join and generate the simple ideas, because we've also noticed that phenomenon where the people who have specialist shared interests want to meet together, but in doing that you miss the cross groups, and trying to look at ways we can pull those people into a community and start meeting. Our goals are city revitalisation, so let's be clear about that, but we think there's a crossover for the goals of the people, jobs, money.
Can I just add something to that, because it is a kind of shared concern, and the university, I think, has that concern as well. From my perspective, coming from a city that was not dissimilar to Newcastle, a post-industrial city like Birmingham, I despair of the politics in Newcastle, but also in Australia. You have rhetoric, and then there's this massive separation to action. And I think you don't play up enough. And the other thing is you don't. And you just allow this to... You all have a vote. You don't seem to have democracy. So it doesn't seem to be any way in which you can kind of gather the gears. In Italy, they don't have any democracy, but they get things done.
Because we're passionate.
Because, okay, so let me now become very German for a minute about this and actually index everything. What we did in Newcastle is we had exactly the same. We had wonderful, wonderful people, post-industrial city, empty space, all the stuff you're doing, okay? And what they actually did, what we miss here is you've got a wonderful novel and there's no index. If I tried, in Birmingham, if I tried to find a games designer, an illustrator, a graphic designer, if I looked for industrial stories or business stories on the internet, all I got was a diatribe of misery. If I do the same for Milano, which is in Italy, of course, I get everyone that can make an engine to a spoon to a designer. We need something as simple as a survey of what's here and something that people can join. And I actually think there are a lot of great people here, and I think that is a prospect.
It's on. I would like Australia to be the light of the world, and Newcastle is the light of Australia. But unfortunately, we're asleep at the wheel. And the thing is, if you have a look at the history of Australia, you can't tell it without understanding the history of Newcastle. And so we're little by little putting that back together again. And the more people understand what's happened in this region and what it's done in making the Australian nation, the more the Australian nation will then find its way. But at the moment, yes, it's all those things, and we probably need a whole lot more Italians here to help.
I'm just going to take the mic here because I'm the facilitator for the day and I can. And I'm just going to put the Greek bit in because we do come from a democratia, and I'm third generation, so there you go. And I'm also very passionate about the arts. There's a little collaborative group happening at the moment between the council, the business centre, Octopod, and I think it's time... Oh, actually, we've also got Renew Newcastle in there. Chris Saunders has just come in and been a part of the activity. And I think we might end up talking to the university and Newcastle now and see what happens when we get too many foreigners around the table. So that might be something to look off. I'm going to allow Claire Williams to have the last say because she has the microphone. Claire?
Thank you. I'd like to end on a high note after a wonderful panel discussion, thank you, by saying, in fact, we are looking at indexing, and I speak as a former librarian. I had to leave the profession, however, it was too exciting, because the university has, under the leadership of Dr. Philip McIntyre, who spoke at the beginning today, have won a significant sum of money through the ARC to conduct a 3-year research project which will map the creative industries in the Hunter and Central Coast. Because, as has already been indicated, we're actually at the stage where we really don't know. We've got lots of connections individually, there's anecdotal evidence, but we have not had a proper scientific approach to understanding just who's around, what they're doing, what their markets are, what their business plans are, what sort of income is generated. And I think that's a really essential first step in developing some good policy and good momentum to take us forward into the next era.
Thank you very much. Guests?